chart watchers. I am welcoming you here to Chartwise Women. Today, we're going to talk about some very interesting concepts. How are you doing, Mary Ellen?
Oh, I'm doing just wonderfully, thanks. Yeah.
Yep.
Just
So, our theme today I thought was going to be a lot of fun. Really, we date our stocks, right? Sometimes, but
mhm.
a lot of times, sometimes we marry it. And you know what? You don't want to always get married to every stock. You shouldn't
Right.
get married every day anyway in real life. So, yes, so we're going to talk about dating your stock and not marrying it. So there's a lot that we can talk about. Have you dated a few people that you were ready to get rid of, or was it an easy time for you?
Oh, no, it's always difficult to let go, right? So,
Exactly.
and I think that would apply to the markets as well. I was thinking we could talk about swipe right or swipe left on your
Yeah,
stock,
exactly.
depending on whether it fits
Exactly.
your profile. But yeah, it's tough to let go sometimes. But I think we're going to get into all of that as far as giving you some guidelines to help you cut the cord, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so let's go ahead and we'll just go right into our wisdom of the week today, because mine is right at the top. And I'm calling investing a personality contest, because I know we're going to talk a lot about stocks having personalities. So I think it's a personality contest. You want to find the one that's got the best personality before you move forward.
Yes, and not just personality, right? We want other good attributes before selecting. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, but my wisdom of the week is talking all about ways that you can keep your emotions out of investing. And one of those ways is having a solid exit plan so that if your stock is not exhibiting positive characteristics, you can easily let go and preserve your capital and
Right.
limit your losses too.
Yeah, you want to save your money so that you can go on your next date.
There you go.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get started here with this. So, I just alluded to the fact that stocks have personalities, and honestly, Mary Ellen, I got this particular phrase from you because when we
Mhm.
started doing Chartwise Women, you always would refer to stocks as having a personality.
Absolutely. I stand by it.
So there are
Yeah.
various personalities that we're going to talk about with stocks, but there are three that we're going to concentrate on. And of the personalities, one would have to be seasonality. We also have to look at the sectors, because some sectors are more defensive and others are more aggressive. And so you have to know that about your stock's personality. And then there are support levels that you will find um, are personal to those stocks. Some stocks like to pull back a long way. Some of them don't. And learning what their personality is along the way will give you hints and clues on how to, invest appropriately and when to let go, which we will of course finish with how to dump a loser.
Kick
So
'em to
let's
the
go ahead
curb.
and get started. I
Mhm.
think the best way to start is seasonality, and we'll start talking about that. Now, one of the things that you will find with seasonality is, I mean, just think about it. There are certain stocks that do better during different parts of the year, and some of them tend to do better certain months of the year, depending on the stock's personality. So, what you can do actually on stock charts is use a seasonality tool to kind of give you an idea of what that stock's personality might be. And it's not too hard. So, of course, I'm going to share my screen and we can talk a little bit more about that. All right.
Eh
So, I'm going to start off with let's look at Google just in general. I'll talk about this chart a little bit more, but how do you find the seasonality of this? So, if you just scroll down right here, you will see seasonality is one of your choices. So if you click on seasonality, it's going to bring up a chart looking like this. And This is the important part, in my opinion, of doing any kind of seasonality. You want the most data points you can possibly have. It will default to 5 years, but we want to take it as far back as we can. And in this case, we have 18 years of data on Google. And so what we do is you now can look and see what are the better months or the worst months for Google. And as you can see, January tends to be a pretty good month. December tends to be a pretty good month, but look at October. October is definitely the month for Google. That's its seasonality. So that is something you can keep in mind when you're, depending on where you are. Now we're sitting here currently in May when we are recording this. And as you can see, Google does all right. 60% of the time, it's up about 2.5%. So you can't sneeze at that. But then look at June. June, it's typically goes down in June. So you might want to keep that in mind when you're getting ready to hold a stock. Do you want it short term? Do you want it any intermediate term? And that way you can start looking at some of that seasonality. Is there any
Another
you can think of that?
Yeah, so I had another thought here that can be really quite helpful. Just in going through a number of stocks, there is that sell in May concept, go away in
Mhm.
May. So even if you pull up the SPX, dollar sign SPX, um,
Oh,
and
they make you put the dollar in front of it.
yes, yes, for those indexes. And so what you'll see is the S&P also, in addition to Google in that May period, is 60%. And really, if you go through and look at any number of those mega cap stocks, they do tend to land at about 60. Um, Now, it's interesting if we put SPX because I'm now retracing. Doesn't it compare it to the SPX? Am I missing?
Absolutely. Well, when we looked at
Hmm.
Google, right, it was May was
Yeah.
all right, but June was a bad month.
Hmm.
October was a bad month, but you can see the S&P, it tends to be more in that September timeframe. It's
Right.
always interesting to hear the, go away in May, and, sell in May, go away. Because when you look at the seasonality, that isn't quite the personality of the S&P. It seems to be more likely you're going to see the selling happen in June rather than May,
Hmm.
which
Hmm.
is very interesting.
Sure. Yeah, it is a bumpy period in the markets. Certainly, May historically is as we begin getting into those first quarter earnings, and it starts to present some bumpiness here.
Yep. And here is the NASDAQ, very similar.
Hmm.
June is not the best month for the NASDAQ 100 and September. And so these are the kind of things that you might want to consider when you start looking at a stock to date. You want to know its personality, and one of those things you can use is seasonality. Now, we're going to go to a quick break, and then we will come back and we're going to talk a little bit more about stocks and their personalities. All right, we are back and we are going to continue to talk about stocks and their personalities. So, one of the things I showed you was how you can use the seasonality tool to get an idea of your stock's personality. And Mary Ellen, one of the other tools is cycles,
Yeah.
cyclical.
You bet, you bet. I'm going to go right into the current sector performances and what we are seeing, and then Erin, perhaps you can show that cyclical chart to maybe confirm what we are seeing.
Mhm.
So in the broader markets, when we are first emerging and coming out of, for instance, last year's bear market, there's a lot of growth stocks that will generally outperform. But now we're a bit further along, and I'm talking about cyclicality, and we are starting to see cyclical stocks, value stocks, outperform. So up here in the forefront, financials, not so much energy is, but it is a recovery play. Basic materials, all about steel, copper. These items, these raw materials are very much in need as the global economy is continuing to expand. Industrial is another, with construction and rebuilding. Again, so cyclically, we are further along in this market. So we can see growth areas such as technology. Now, this is a 1 week chart. We can go back a little bit further just to give you a feel for how you can stay on top of this cyclical basic materials, financials up here, industrials in the forefront. Again, your growth areas generally underperforming as we get into the later phases. So, Erin, I didn't know if you have that
Yes.
our
So let's look at this is straight out of chart school from StockCharts.com, and it's the article on sector rotation. And so when we're talking about cycles, there is a similar cycle just in the way sectors perform over time. And you can see here's your technology, comm services. These give you where we are in that cycle. So when we're looking at market bottoms, bull market, market tops, you can see that at market bottoms, you're going to tend to see technology and discretionary and comm services begin to outperform. It'll lead you right where you said we're getting further along in the market right now. It looks like we're coming into a market top. And that's where you're starting to see the materials, energy, some of those more growth names than, value areas rather than growth. And then as you come down out of the market top, you're going to start seeing these rather they're defensive sectors, and then we'll just start moving out into the financial real estate, and then we're back to technology. But you can see we're sitting kind of here. And when you start to see these groups over here start to perform, healthcare, staples, utilities, typically, I mean, it's not perfect, but when you start to see those to outperform, that tells you, okay, we did probably hit a market top and the market's going to be going down. So that's why you really want to pay attention to that sector rotation, because depending on what sector your stock is in, it that adds to its personality, does it not?
absolutely, absolutely. Yep.
All right, so let's go to our next topic, and that is talking about those defensive sectors versus the aggressive sectors. I kind of touched on that, but Mary Ellen, in your experience, you were talking about value and growth. Do you
Mhm.
find, certain stocks and certain sectors that interest you at different times?
Absolutely, yes. In fact, so I do have my biweekly MEM Edge report, and last Sunday, I talked about this move away from technology as far as in May just happens to be where we are. So you do need to be aware of that. And it is, in fact, playing out certainly this week. I know 1 week does not a market make, but just being aware of what the group that your stock is a part of is doing. I've talked about this in the past. Almost 50% of your stock's price appreciation or depreciation has to do with the group that they're a part of. So you want to stay on top of that sector rotation, and certainly we can take that a little bit further. I can share
Yes.
my screen here and we can look out even further. So this is that 1 month. Erin pointed out materials, healthcare right up at that peak. as we are further along in these markets. And then also real estate, these are going to be your higher yielding areas. So when you talk about defensive stocks, healthcare is definitely one of them. We are going to continue to need healthcare regardless of any economic, whether it's inflation or any other slowdown. And then also real estate, these REIT stocks offer quite a bit in the way of yields. So then from here, what you can do as far as uncovering stocks, this is something that we talk about a lot, but it does bear repeating, is the fact that in the real estate sector, you can use this scooter rating to get in front of those areas that would have the most in the way of vibrant stocks that might fit your personality. The personality test here is all about this StockCharts technical rating. So these charts up here at the forefront have the best as far as technical chart. And I'll tell you from my work, you can take it a step further beyond that chart, and you'll find that within that also the reason it's technically sound is because there are a lot of positives going on as far as fundamentally. So this is Simon Property Group, SPG. They offer, for instance, real estate, apartments, and so forth. I like to see that it also has a 4.2 yield. We talked about that, and they did just report. They didn't quite have positive numbers yet, but they are definitely firming up. The management talked very highly as far as the prospects for the remainder of the year. So among REIT stocks, it's one of the most fundamentally sound names, in addition to having an attractive chart. Still plenty of upside. So that's what I also wanted to point out.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, so let's start talking about another personality that of a stock that maybe you haven't thought about, and that is support levels and typical pullbacks. You'll find that stocks tend to use certain levels of support, and you'll also learn that sometimes, when you get those pullbacks, you can actually look back in time somewhat and determine what those typical pullbacks are going to be on the stock that you own. So I have a few examples, and Mary Ellen, I
Hmm.
know you do because
I do as well.
again,
Yes.
that 50-day moving average I know is just critical for you.
Hmm.
So let's go back, and I'm going to pull up my chart list. I thought it was all ready to go here, but I have a few charts that I've marked up that will show you just the personality of a couple of stocks. Okay. So I'm going to start with American Waterworks. Now, I've got a lot of arrows and everything on this chart, but one thing you're going to notice if you go back in time on this is that typically this stock will pull back to the 50-day moving average and then rebound, pull back to the 50-day moving average and rebound. When it pulls down below it, that's usually not a good sign. In this case, the pullback wasn't too horrible, but you can see back here, once it lost its typical support level, that's when things started to go south for this stock. But now we're back into a more bullish look. And so we're coming back down once again to the 50 and moving up. Now, what I'm talking about over here is your typical pullbacks. And with this stock, American Waterworks, you can see that the pullbacks generally aren't that awful. So what I do is I go back and look at when the RSI has gotten very overbought. And then I go and check when it makes the turn, because when the RSI turns down from overbought territory, you're going to see that stock move down. So in this case, when it got overbought, it pulled out back about 8.7%. And it started moving its way back up, got overbought, pulled back about 7%. Back here, you've got overbought, came in, and it pulled back 9.3%. So one thing you can see with this stock is that typically if it's holding its support levels, that if you get overbought, you can expect between a 7 to 10% decline when you get that overbought reading and it starts to pull back. So that's one of the stocks that I was going to talk about with personality, because I know, like I said, I know you're going to show me some great stocks that use that 50-day moving average. But this is kind of a tool I only learned recently. And I'm finding it to be very, very helpful because typically these stocks do have a personality as far as how far they will pull back.
Very good. Yeah. Shall
All
I?
right. I
Oh, go
have
right
one
ahead.
more and then I'm going to
Of
pass it
course.
to you. And this is
Hmm.
Bitcoin. And of course, Bitcoin has been just a crazy one to watch. But again, it has a very distinct personality as far as pulling back to that 50 every single time and then finding a bounce, pulling back and moving up, pulling back. When it finally loses it, there's some trouble. And so that's when you get out. And there you go. And again, looking at the personality of Bitcoin, when it gets overbought and falls, this is a little different than American Waterworks was. You have to expect if you get overbought and it starts to turn south, you could end up with a 20 to 30% decline on Bitcoin. So that gives you a little bit of a sense of what to expect with that particular chart.
Very good.
So
Yeah.
let me see some of yours. I know you
Oh, you
have
bet.
a great personality. You have some great stocks to win a personality contest.
Too true. Yes. So let me go ahead and get us a more current chart here. We can take a look at some of these semiconductor stocks. They've been really had been doing quite well. This is Applied Materials, AMAT. And I'm identifying here, it's been a big winner for my MEM Edge report. So we can see as the stock is in this nice uptrend, it pulls back very orderly to this 21-day, presents a new buying opportunity, pulls back. And this is very exemplary of these big winners. They're not going to go straight up. They will have these pullbacks and another pullback. But as long as it's still finding support at this 50-day simple moving average, you are still in good standing. Now, you do want to pay attention to your outside momentum indicators as well. Applied Material does have a negative RSI, that's a relative strength indicator. However, your other momentum indicator is still, while it's trending downward, it's still in positive territory. So 2 out of 3 of your aspects are still constructive for Applied Material, but you will want to keep it on your radar as far as staying on top of the stock, because this is the group that Applied Material is a part of. This is semiconductor stocks, and they have broken down with both of their momentum indicators now in negative territory. Staying with that theme, we can take a look at another semiconductor stock, Taiwan Semi, TSM. This was another big winner coming out of that bear market that I was able to participate in. However, take a look, it broke down in March. This is a semiconductor name well before the group did, and it never really regained. You can see any kind of rally attempts are being met with upside resistance as that 50-day, this red line, trends lower. Your area of resistance historically will tend to be lower and lower. So I'm not sure how we are with time here.
Oh, we have plenty of time. Did you have another one?
Absolutely. Let me go back over to this area here. And I did want to share. This is, let me get to the other one, FTCH, Farfetch, another big winner here. But what I did want to share with you is, again, the stock during its uptrending period is continuing to find support. Now, this move here was over 100%. So at some point in time, you're going to anticipate a pullback. As long as it finds support at that 50, you can stay with it. But then we eventually, unfortunately, did have a break below that 50-day. And then this was when we removed it from our MEM Edge list and we're able to retain a nice triple digit gain. And then here we are again. You can see these rally attempts are being met with resistance at these now downward trending simple moving averages. So I did want to share that. I mean, I could go
I know you've
I
got
could
it.
go on and on. Here's another one. I actually owned this stock, nice 440% gain. But again, while it's in an uptrend, it's continuing to find support at that 50-day. And then once the stock breaks below here with your outside momentum indicators signaling negatively, it's time to exit the party. It's time to move on and date another stock. And this is another one where the particular industry group, it was alternative energy, was also coming under pressure. So was able to lock in some nice gains and not have to experience this downtrend that could very well have been very close to a round trip here. Not
Yeah,
quite.
and actually that does bring us to our final subject. You just got us right on into it, and that's
Hmm.
when to dump a loser. This is why you only want to date your stocks. You don't want to marry them because you don't want to get stuck with them when they're having a down day or they've turned into a bearish stock. You don't want to be married to a bear. You want to be married to a bull. So you just showed us one of the ways you can realize when it is time to dump your stock, just because, again, the personality is telling you everything. Here's a great example. I haven't marked it up, but there are a lot of things here on Tesla that give you those hints and clues as to when you want to dump it and when you want to stick with it. The RSI, like I said, this gives us some really good intuition as to what happens when we do start to see a breakdown above our 50-day moving average. So we want to, decide, is this worth it? So here is where we saw it turn down right here. So let's look at the percentage. It looks like it would be a little bit, right? That's a 22% pullback after that particular overbought situation. Here we've got one, and how far is this one? We're looking at 36%. So even though your stock might be above its personality area, you need to be aware that when this stock gets very overbought, there's a really good chance that you might have to suck up kind of a bigger loss than you might want to. So that's an idea of when you may want to dump the stock. But you can see here, it got overbought here, it got overbought there. And, we really didn't see much of a loss at all on this pullback. It barely pulled back and then started moving higher. You can see over here, it did pull back about 13%, 14%, but we didn't dump it necessarily just because it was sitting above its 20-day EMA as it was hitting these overbought areas. So it's a little different situation than over here because you can see that we lost that 20-day EMA. Yes, we held the 50, but we did not hold the 20. So that's something to consider. So where else we can see the 50 again, as soon as it lost the 50, and as you said, you've got a negative RSI, you can see momentum is just really moving lower fast. That's your bailout point. So if you had gotten in back on this move, once it bounced, would have been sideways for a while, but you would have been able to ride this and then get out here. You would have had to take a little bit of a decline, but at the same time, it saved you from a decline of about 30%. So we're
Very good.
just about out of time here, Mary Ellen. This has been
Yes.
so much fun talking about stocks and their personalities. So I
Hmm.
would like to tell everybody, go out and find the best date possible. And
Good
happy
advice.
trading.
Hey guys, Dave Keller here with StockCharts.com. Thanks so much for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, and we hope you did, hit the like button right below. Also, we have so much new content every day. Consider subscribing to the channel. Just hit the subscribe button in the video or right below. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Have a fantastic day.